Hey everyone, it's Lisa from Primitive Gatherings, and it's time for our 2025 Scrappy Show. So Merry Christmas everyone, enjoy all the quilts that we have for you because they are amazing. So let's go on in. Over here, the first one to greet us here is called Jack's Chain, and it is from Joan Bukowski from Wisconsin Rapids. Sorry about that. Many years ago, the quilt guild I belonged to had a 9-pack exchange. I had hundreds of 3-inch 9 patches and needed a pattern. Jack's Chain was the answer. All but 4 rows were complete when it became a UFO for 20 years. The Walmart bag had everything, including the binding, and it was finished now that I am retired. I still have 259 patches to use. Joan, I loved your quilt. I put it here at the beginning of the quilt show because I think it was absolutely gorgeous. It fit this door wonderfully. The quilting on it is amazing. So thanks, Joan. All right, so let's maybe start over here. Let's go over here to number 8. Okay, so you got to bear with me a little bit while I find them. This one is called Whirl by Kathy Ninehouse from Oak Harbor, Washington. The pattern is Whirl, and it was quilted by Primitive Gatherings. In January of 2023, Cheryl Johnson of Temecula Quilt Company invited her bloggers to sew along as she set about to reproduce this antique quilt. She started constructing it from the center and it grew outwardly in quadrants. Because of this unconventional construction, there were partial seams and nothing nested. Mine stayed a UFO until the Scrappy Quilt Show theme was announced. I regained my mojo and finished. The energy and movement are what I like most about Whirl, even though it was a bear too. And then I don't know the rest of the story because we must have some time or space limitations here. So beautiful quilt, Kathy. We were all looking at it, wondering how it was put together, and you solved it for us with the nesting or with the partial seams. So yeah, that makes perfect sense now. Okay, and then we have number 5, and I just want to take a minute because I don't think I said who quilted 123. So 123 was quilted by Karen Rudin, Quilts by Karen. So that was Jack's Chain. I just forgot to mention that, and I don't want to forget anything this year. All right, so number 5, this is a beautiful quilt. Maybe I'm a little partial to it because it looks like it's rainbow-ish. So Waste Not, Quilt More by Carol Karenite from Cortland, Ohio, quilted by Renee Hofstetler. I am an 82-year-old scrap-saving quilter. As I started the Unity project, it was normal for me to put my papers in one corner of the fabric pieces. So when trimming them later, I had 2 strips of fabric left over from each piece. I tried sewing a small log cabin block with the 1.5-inch logs. I liked the result and continued each month making more blocks. My partial barn-raising quilt has 567 different fabrics, all left over from the Unity project. A friend of mine suggested I entered in the Scrappy Quilt Contest. It truly was a personal challenge for you. It's beautiful. We love all the rainbow-ness of it. Gorgeous, gorgeous. I want to just see a whole big quilt out of it, even though this is beautiful as well. All right, then we have number 97, and 97 is Cassiopeia. I think that's a star constellation. Jennifer Copas Ruse from Hamden, Connecticut, quilted by Jennifer herself. Cassiopeia is a constellation which is at the height of prominence in autumn to winter. This quilt started out as a leader-ender project and was perfect for this show. Yes, we love stars, especially those Peaky and Spike, or what do we call those? Tri-Rex or something like that. So those aren't the easiest to make. So good job, Jennifer. All right, then next up we have number 44. And let me just say that It's very hard to hang these quilts in this show. We had 129 of them entered, and some of them are going to be folded up, some of them are full out, but we try to do our best to give everybody a nice spot. All right, this is called Happy Home by Patty Nault, Neenah, Wisconsin. Happy Home, quilted by Amanda Frankel, is the pattern and the quilter. I fell for wool applique when I attended my first sit and stitch at the gathering. Newly retired, I was looking for a place to develop my quilting skills, and Primitive Gatherings turned out to be that place. At the same time, my quilting skills were steadily improving after joining the quilt subscription box. I spotted Lisa Bongean's Happy Home at Primitive Gatherings and knew it was perfect pattern to use up cotton and wool scraps. The fabrics are from Garden Gatherings and my carousel quilt. The shop sample, quilted by Linda Hirschko, was used for inspiration. Awesome. Thank you, Patty. I love seeing my quilt designs. You never get tired of them. Number 15 is up next. Scrappy Hexies by Barb Tuman, St. Charles, Illinois. The pattern is Hexie Garden, quilted by Barb herself as well. When I saw Scrappy for the 2025 quilt show, I thought 30s, and all matched their own way. I had plenty of 30s fabrics to use, some original, some reproductions. The Hexies were hand-painted, hand-pieced, and buttonholed to the squares. When it came time for a border, I cut 2.5 by 3-inch rectangles from every fabric I had. The quilting was done on my domestic machine. A scrappy quilt deserves a scrappy back and scrappy sleeve. Fun project. Yes, scrappy all the way. And nobody ever gets tired of those hexagons. Okay, let's go. Number 9 is up next. Golden by Sue Jones, Maryville, Tennessee. The pattern is Anthology, quilted by Sue Jones. When I saw the book Anthology with 182 4x5-inch blocks, I made 75 blocks from my scraps and fat quarters. This quilt has 52 piece blocks, some with Primitive Gatherings triangle paper and 1 paper piece block. I started designing from the center out, and I am pleased with the result. There are more than 100 different colored fabrics and more than 40 shirtings used in the quilt. Using my home Bernina machine, I quilted every piece in the blocks in the ditch and then slightly quilted the rest of the quilt. This quilt seemed perfect for this 2025 Scrappy Quilt Show. Yes, it's a beautiful quilt. Okay, number 16 is this beautiful heart that is made by Joan Nyhoff. It's called Cross Your Heart, and Joan is from Holland, Michigan. Cross Your Heart and quilted by Joan is the name of the pattern. Bought the pattern in Mission, Texas in 2025. When I heard about Primitive Gatherings Scrappy Quilt Show, I decided this pattern would work well for the 75 different fabrics needed. I had many batiks to use in this quilt. We love it. I love the cross too, don't you, Kaylee? Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm here with Kaylee, if you haven't figured out that I'm not running the camera as well. And I feel bad for her because this is a heavy get-up she's holding on to. So please know that this is no small feat to spend what time we're going to be doing going through every one of these quilts. So we will be taking a couple breaks. Schoolgirl Sampler by Kathy Anderson from West Bend, Wisconsin. That is the name of the pattern as well, and Kathy quilted it herself. I purchased Kathleen Tracy's Schoolgirl Sampler book, intrigued by the small 4-inch blocks, in the fall of 2023. The Ye Old Schoolhouse Quilt in Cedarburg offered this monthly Saturday's Sew, Sip, and Share class. Our homework assignment was 6 blocks each month. I enjoyed working with the small pieces. Spray starch is your friend, in parentheses, she says. And choosing from many different fabrics, I used the Schoolhouse block for the center and chose a sampler. Open quilting design for the piecing could go to the head of the class and shine through. Since every student is a star, I chose a star design with arcs that gave a hint of the Baptist fan arcs. Yep, it's going to be hard to see some quilting on some of the quilts because it's hard to see, but we will do our best. Okay, then next up is number 79. 79 is Gandhi Dancer. I hope that's what that says. It's a weird font. What does that say? Is that a G? Gandhi Dancer?
I think so.
Okay. Gandhi Dancer by Megan Grobel. Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin. Pattern Wild Winnie block quilted by Megan herself. Making this quilt was bumpy at times, just like ski run Gandy Dancer. Okay, now that says it. The quilt's namesake on Mary Jane in Winter Park, Colorado. I decided to use the Wild Winnie block from Lynn Goldsworthy, the Ultimate Quilt and Block Collection, as my inspiration and design my own. The first pattern looked like Block of the Month from Primitive Gatherings. I designed this using EQ8 with paper piecing, both new to me. My goals for 2025 included skiing down Gandy Dancer and completing this quilt. Not perfection, but joy of the journey. It's all about the joy of the journey. We love that. All right, then next up here is number 125, and I know that The Quilted Witch by Lori Strobel from Oshkosh, Wisconsin, the pattern of the same name, and it was quilted by Lori herself. I wanted to make my first scrappy quilt entirely from my fabric stash, including the backing. There are 153 fabrics and none of them are repeated in 2 blocks. This pattern has been on my to-do list for years, and when I committed to this project, I became obsessed. I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning to get a couple hours work on before the kids woke up. I love making my Quilted Witch, and we love seeing it here too as well, Lori. And then number 1 is from, let's see, Scrappy Strings by Dorothy Dudas, Medina, Ohio. Pattern is called Scrappy Strings and is quilted by Karen Spears. I started the quilt block several years ago after seeing Fat Quarter Shop demonstrating the Scrappy Strings blocks by Lori Holt. When I heard the 2025 Scrappy Quilt Show, I decided to finish the quilt. I used 1.5 to 3.5 inch strip and added sashing between each grouping of 4 blocks. I separated each grouping with a Bella Solid number 200. I designed the border using my EQ8 and matching the designer fabrics and border fabric with each grouping. With my quilt being so angular, I had my long arm quilter Karen Spears finish the quilt with a swirl and traditional design. As a traditional quilter, this was definitely out of my comfort zone, and I just want to make sure we see her beautiful little border down here with all her different fabrics. All right, how fun is that? And it looks like it's half square triangles. And by the way you place them, it makes like, this could be like 2 flying geese either way, but she used half square triangles. Beautiful border. All right, okay, this one right here, number 60. It's our first quilt today here with a ribbon on it. Symphony of Fall by Lisa Beeson and Rita Swain, Correctionville, Iowa, quilted by Lisa Beeson. My mom is 96 now, but was 94 when she pieced most of this quilt. Many of the fabrics are from my grandma's stash and my mom's. My mom and I enjoy quilting and creating together, along with my 4 daughters. I, Lisa Beeson, did all the embroidery and designing of the accents and saying. I also custom quilted it. Leaf embroidering are OESD and other embroidery patterns are also OESD. The lettering I designed myself. I started learning to quilt when I was 4 years old on a treadle home sewing machine. My grandma and mom taught me quilting. This just took our breath away. Look at the beautiful detail of this beautiful little bird in here. I would have no idea how to do this, so I was overly impressed with this quilt. It is gorgeous, so great job everyone. Rita and Lisa, a mother-daughter team, and I'm super jealous that you learned at 4 years old. It's obviously her talent, right? So she's got a 2nd place. Okay. All right, so we're going to just come around this way. So we're going to do this room here. So on the back side of the quilt we were just on is we have number 30. And Autumn Aura is the name of this one by Joanne Lane, Galena, Ohio, quilted by Joanne as well. Fall inspired this quilt made of 77 yellows, golds, oranges, creams, whites, reds, and greens. I included a few of my favorite blocks, flying geese, Ohio stars, and broken dishes. The finished size is 86 by 93. I embroidered some of the autumn wreaths, acorns, berries, and leaves. Leaf shapes were machine quilted around all the borders. A grid pattern was machine quilted in the background. All pieced blocks were machine quilted. The label was hand drawn, painted, hand stitched, and embroidered. You can tell I just love the fall color palette here, and it's just so unique and beautiful. So thanks for your entry, Joanne. It's fabulous. All right, next up, number 101. We have this beautiful log cabin called Crackpots by Patricia Rosenbaum, Dwight, Illinois. And same name as the pattern, and Patricia also quilted it. Our quilt bee found this pattern and decided to exchange fabrics to make it. Some of us completed the project, others chose a different path. So beautiful, beautiful log cabins. And then she has, I think, these little schoolhouses here on the border. All right, so I just want to point out that there is a border on it, and I believe they just kind of travel all the way around. And as it sits here, you see them kind of upside down, but beautiful quilt. We loved it. All right, stepping back, we have number 20. We had to get creative this year, and we had to hang off the fire pipe, but if you see up there, I have black batting protecting underneath all the quilts that are hanging high. So number 20 is called Scrappy Polka Dot Stars by Jeannie Lafayette, Schaumburg, Illinois. Patterns, Scrap Happy Little Wishes, quilted by Jeannie herself. I retired in 2017 and started quilting regularly. I found Pat Sloan's website and YouTube videos and started following her. She made this scrappy star block, and I made one block which became my first UFO. When I saw Permanent Gatherings Quilt Show was Scrappy Quilts this year, I pulled out my block and made 11 more blocks. Luckily, I saved large polka dot, black and white fabrics. The rest I pulled from my scrap bins. The black sashing fabric is one from a thrift store, and decided to also make scrappy binding to complete the scrappy look. I call my quilt Smiles because it always makes me feel happy and smiley. Then next up we have number 54, and it looks like some log cabin hearts up there, way up high. My Heart Belongs to Scrap Quilts is its name, by Rosa Gherkin, Westfield, Wisconsin. Pattern is called Log Cabin Heart Quilt. This is quilted by Rosa herself. I was very sick in 2020, quarantined to my sewing room for 4 days. Hey, I think all of us would want to do that. I was scrolling Pinterest and this darling quilt popped up. I got my graph paper and figured out the heart block pattern only. The pattern went in my file for use with my 1930s fat quarter collection. After a move in 2021 and many house projects, I decided to dig into this project. It was completed and quilted on my home machine in May of 2025. I love the little hearts going around as the border as well. So good job, Rosa, designing that. And then next up, number 33. Santa Fe Salvages by Kim Brandt, Sunset Beach, North Carolina. The pattern is Santa Fe String Star, and it was quilted by Elizabeth Spring. I fell in love with Bonnie Hunter's scrappy designs and just had to make this one. I collected salvages from my fellow guild members and my friends for years before making this salvage star. Started in 2015 and finally finished it. Beautiful, beautiful quilt, Kim. We love this one, so that's why we put it over our big cabinet here so we could see it straight out and enjoy all those wonderful scrappy fabrics. Beautifully done. All right. Now, next up we have another one, 111. And let's see what this says here. I'm probably going to open this one up because I think it needs to be opened up. Willie and Blue by Janet Clamp, Papillion, Nebraska. Pattern is Urban Owls and Bowie and Chloe, quilted by Bonnie Kennick, Sunroom Quilting. The bulk of the quilt is a pattern, Urban Owls by Wendy Williams. I replaced the center with owls with this cute pattern by Rebecca Pennenston. I renamed the characters after my own pets, Willie the dog and Blue the Quaker parrot. Techniques used are applique, foundation paper piecing, traditional piecing. It was also so fun to dive into my world of colorful stash and make this quilt. All right, I would just love to fold this full out because again, this was one of them that didn't get displayed full out, so let's show you as much of it as we can here. Pretty, beautiful, bright, lots going on. Super fun. All right, so I'm just going to fold this up now because guess what? All these quilts are going to go back to you. So I'm just going to fold this one up and just set it here. And we will be back to put that in its correct spot, flat out. All right, so Kaylee, let's do this one right here, number 84. I got to watch where I'm going. 84, Posh Penelope by Lindy Reagan, Maryville, Tennessee. Posh Penelope, quilted by Lindy as well. I made this quilt because I fell in love with the design. I signed up for a class at my local guild. At first I found the pattern, even though I've been piecing since 1977. It's like eating potato chips, one block after another until the top was finished. I quilted it on my Millie using a digital design made just for that quilt. I also enjoyed using bright fabric from Lori Holt and true colors from Tula Pink. She says enjoy. It is so spectacular. I love this quilt, and it really marries nice with the one behind it as well. The fabrics kind of match each other. So let's go on to the other side here. Number 7 is called Dear Jen by Tina Rosenberger from Lutz, Florida. Dear Jen, and it was quilted by Lisa Arndt. All blocks were made from templates and were meant to be hand pieced. I decided I wanted to machine piece them. I spent approximately 6 months scanning the templates into a Brothers Scan and Cut, assigning 1/4-inch seam allowances and cut lines. All the fabric was stiffened using Terrial Magic and cut with the Scan and Cut machine. It took 2 years to sew these blocks. Most had to be taken apart and resewn multiple times. However, I am very happy with the final outcome. There is over 4,000 pieces in this quilt. Yes, this definitely was a blue ribbon winner, first place in a commercial pattern. And you will see that we have more ribbons than we had categories because sometimes I can't just pick one winner. Sometimes I need to pick multiple winners because the quilts were so good. So know that we picked lots of winners this time and not just one in each category. And first we had several blues, several reds, and several white ones. Okay, so let's come back this way and let's grab way up high number 73. We got to make sure we don't miss any, and I'm supposed to be marking them down, but oh boy. Schoolgirl Sampler. So this is another Schoolgirl Sampler, even though they look totally different. And this one is by Jeannie, I'm guessing Guybe from Pacific, Missouri, and it is Schoolgirl Sampler pattern and quilted by Barb Garrison. I participated in a stitch along sponsored by Kathleen Tracy and showcased her Schoolgirl Sampler quilt from her book Schoolgirl Sampler. 72 simple 4-inch blocks and 7 charming quilts published in 2020. The sew-along lasted 15 weeks. I sewed 6 4-inch blocks per week for a total of 72 blocks, and then the 14-inch center hand applique blocks and 4 borders. The borders measured 1.5, 2.5, 92 2.5-inch half square triangles, and the final 6-inch border. Each 4-inch block is surrounded by 1/2-inch sashings and cornerstone blocks. The quilt was started in 2021 and completed in 22. Beautifully done. We love Schoolgirl Sample. We actually did it here at Primitive Gatherings as well. All right, number 12 is Scrappy Memories from Dana Dorfler and from O'Fallon, Illinois. The pattern is Tiny 9-patch and is quilted by Dana as well. Inspired by our year-long challenge by Taryn Faulkner of Repo Quilt Lover in 2024, this quilt honors an antique from her collection featuring tiny 9-patch blocks. Using scraps accumulated over many years, most from Primitive Gatherings Summer Block of the Weeks program, I embrace the joy of miniature piecing. Most of the 9 patches are unique, stitched with over 500 different fabrics, rich with memories. With no formal pattern, I followed the antiques layout, adding a wider border for balance. This quilt is a tribute to tradition and my love of scrap piecing. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love this quilt as well. Okay, so then let's go here. And I just want to know that we had a retreat last week and I moved this quilt over here. It was not on this chair for the quilt show. It was back in the room and nobody sat in front of it, but it's here now. So let's just give it a minute here. 74 is certainly not perfect. Good. Because you know what? Nothing has to be perfect anymore. Linda Karam from Winter Haven, Florida, and the pattern is certainly not perfect, and it was quilted by Linda herself. Shortly after it was announced that the 2025 theme would be Scrappy, I happened to see a YouTube video teaching the potato chip block. I thought it would work well with my 2.5-inch wide leftover strips, lots of fabric and easy to piece. The top was done quickly, but life changes, and I had an extreme health issue that made me unable to sew or stitch. Always remember, God is good all the time. All the time, God is good. I was finally able to get back to the machine in mid-September, so it is done, but certainly not perfect. We don't care. Done is way better than perfect. Okay, Kaylee, should we go here on this side? Let's do this one, sorry. The numbers are on the other side. We'll get those on the other side. So 77, Make Your Point by Deborah Vest, Brunswick, Georgia. Pattern, Make Your Point, and quilted by Elizabeth Lee. My long armor quilted this pattern for another client and I liked it. I didn't have the pattern, so she measured the blocks and I made it from one of those measurements. Found out later that the pattern is from American Patchwork and Quilting, named Make Your Point. My friends gave me some scraps to include with my stash to put in the quilt, which makes it special to me. The placement of the darks and lights is what makes it look like it's on point. The blocks are simple, consistent, consisting of 16 patches and pinwheels. So yeah, so it's a beautiful overall design. That means no matter how we fold it, it's the same, and it looks beautifully hanging here in the, when you walk into the gathering, this is kind of the focal entry point. So Deborah, your quilt is beautiful, hanging right here next to number 29. That is kind of a showcase here as well. And this quilt, number 29, is called Floaters by Matt Cox from Boise, Idaho. The pattern is called Roundabout and is quilted by Matt himself. The Floaters, aka Seeing Spots quilt, was inspired by an online video and free pattern from Donna Jordan of Jordan Fabrics. Using all Primitive Gatherings fabric, 15 different collections, including the itty bitty background gatherings, the quilt is comprised of 3,500 triangles. The border was designed to try to compete with the circles along the edges of the quilt. 5 years ago, when I started quilting, I would have never imagined completing such a project. That is until I came across the Stitch with Lisa Bongean YouTube channel and I was hooked on all things Primitive Gatherings. Now when we go around, I'm going to show you the back side of this quilt, but congratulations, Matt, on your 3rd place ribbon. All right, then right here we're going to go 109. 109 is called Scrappy Reuse from Nancy Schallhoff from Barnegat, New Jersey. The pattern is called Charm Friday and it is quilted by Nancy herself. I am pleased to submit my quilt for the 2025 Scrappy Quilt Show, made entirely from fabric scraps sourced 100% cotton fabrics. Fab Scrap is a nonprofit organization in Brooklyn, New York, where I volunteer. Fab Scrap is dedicated to recycling pre-consumer textiles from the garment industry, giving new life to materials that otherwise might be discarded. My entry highlights creative reuse with at least 125 plus unique scraps, including floral stripes, prints arranged in vibrant squares, and 9 patch blocks. Volunteering at Fab Scrap has deepened my appreciation for textiles. I look forward to showcasing the celebration of resourcefulness and creativity. How fun is that? It's always fun to reuse fabrics. Then we have number 22. #22 is called 50 Shades of Scrappy by Donna Frederick, Madisonville, Kentucky. The pattern is unknown and it is quilted by Donna herself. So this looks like, to me, it's a 4-patch and then a half square triangle probably. All right, and it's just set on point and it makes that strippy lanes in there. So number 22, I remember seeing a similar quilt years ago from a Better Homes and Gardens quilt book. Quilt Lovers Favorites Volume 2. I loved it and it stayed in my memory all that time. So in early 2023, faced with far too many scraps, it began. I made it wider and longer, 91 by 75. This is because of my high head and footboards. I wanted to be able to throw it across my bed and not have to tuck anything in. Also, I thought it would float the columns to add more interest. But what made me happiest was my stripe binding design. Although it is not my best work, it has the most scraps. So let's check out her bindings. All right, look at that. She knows how to do that flange, which I completely do not know how to do well, and I have tried it. So look at, she used all these little squares in here as well, and then she did a flange, and she did that by machine. I cannot do that. So kudos to that. All right, let's back up here and go back up high for number 35. This one was so in the running for a ribbon, like you were so close. And I don't know, you know, sometimes some things, it's hard to pick, but this is Karen Rantis and it's called Good Golly, and she is from Lake Zurich, Illinois, and it is quilted by Dawn Larson. The quilt is called Good Golly. The pattern was a Sue Garman masterpiece. This quilt has over 400 different fabrics and over 2,000 half square triangles. My absolute favorite things to make. You and me, Karen, we love those half square triangles. And like I said, this quilt was gorgeous. It was just so close, so close. Like I said, this is one of them that makes me not sleep at night because it is so nice and that it didn't get a ribbon, but it should have. Okay, here we go. 104 is coming up. Hourglass Scraps by Melissa Murgua by Santa Clara, California. And it is also quilted by Melissa as well. This year was all about cleaning out my scraps and scrap management. When I heard that Primitive Gatherings was having a Scrappy Quilt contest this year, I knew I had to enter. After searching for just the right pattern, I decided to use Corey Yoder's Hourglass Scraps. I adjusted the pattern to use scraps instead of a collection of fabric. I also changed the outer border to make the quilt look scrappier. The quilt came out looking great. I will definitely be making more quilts with this pattern. Yes, we all love those hourglasses, don't we? Number 68. Lots of fabrics in this one. Grandma Hattie by Marjorie Nelson from Appleton, Wisconsin. And it was quilted by Marjorie as well. When I was very young, we would drive to visit my Grandpa Walter and Grandma Hattie Swiger, who lived on a small farm in Pleston, Pleaston, Michigan. Sorry about all these names. I remember all her quilts she made on the treadle sewing machine by hand. I remember standing by her bedroom door and peeking at all her bed quilts. This one comes to memory. I loved Tilda fabric and added another scrap for a little pop here and there. There are 5,008 1-inch squares, including the binding squares. I lost count on how many different fabrics are in the quilt, but a lot. Yes, a beautiful Marjorie. We love this quilt and such a good job. It is hand quilted, so that also makes it special. Number 93, called All My Love by Amelia Haynes from Oshkosh, Wisconsin. The pattern is cut right, slit, and sew double wedding ring template, quilted by Amelia herself. My double wedding ring quilt was a bucket list made of Liberty of London scraps and fat quarters I'd collected. I worked on the quilt in between wedding planning and moving into our first home. Making it in honor of our wedding, I had quilted a floral motif in each ring, capturing this special, exciting time in our lives. So congratulations, Amelia. I did not know you got married, but there's some hand quilting in this as well. This is another one that I wish could have been full out. So beautiful. Okay, Kaylee, let's go over to number 43. All right, 43, X's and Bows by Kristen Trader from Suring, Wisconsin. Bowtie quilt quilted by Lori Kreblesh. I began this quilt after I had finished my first project at Primitive Gatherings. I didn't realize how tiny and how many pieces were involved. There are 216 pieces in each block, or 12,096 total without borders. I considered it a challenge, especially when Lisa announced this year's quilt show would be Scrappy. I set weekly goals and started it in October of 2024. I finished it in July and was able to get it to the long armor. The biggest challenge was trying to make sure my scraps didn't repeat too much or touch. Beautiful quilt. We love this layout. Awesome, awesome job. Though I believe those are 2-inch little bow ties. Okay, number 128, Way Up High. This one called Spinning Around by Barb Funk from Winneconne, Wisconsin. Same name for the pattern, and it was quilted by Sherry Sweeney. And I think Barb also quilted a little bit on here by hand. There's some big stitch quilting running down those long stripes in the quilt. So Jen Kingwell is such an inspiration. After spending time with her in August, I decided to create this quilt. Pinwheels are my favorite block. Every fabric for each block was purposely matched. There are a few fabric repeats. My husband gave me the flange binding idea. I wanted to bring my fun, vibrant backing into the quilt top. This is my very first full-size Scrappy quilt. I wanted very minimal quilting done to keep up with its vintage feel. Hand quilting done with Aurifil 8-weight wool pennies added as well. So sometimes, you know, when you see something unique, that's what really makes a judge look longer. And this one got a 3rd place ribbon, and I just love how she just put the pennies just in one spot, right? And look at that beautiful flange done so nicely. It just adds a little bit more to the quilt. It hangs beautifully. And I love the combination of the hand quilting and the machine quilting. There's nothing to say that the quilt can't have both in it. Okay, moving right along. Number 4. Another ribbon winner. This is another 3rd place ribbon, and it is called Traditional Baby Jane by Annie Bardis, Port St. Lucie, Florida, and it was quilted by Annie herself as well. I made my Dear Jane quilt using using, I think it's supposed to be more than 280 Joe Morton and Kim Deal fabrics. No fabric is duplicated. I used the Dear Jane book, an itty bitty ace ruler, paper and pencil. I made my own templates, paper pieced, machine appliqued, and traditional pieced the top. I quilted each block and triangle individually. The back is a 108 wide primitive muslin. It looks like a whole cloth. My Dear Jane quilt turned 2 years old this year and has 5,205 pieces. This quilt was so well done. I absolutely loved how, even though she didn't like needle turn the applique, she stitched them so perfectly with blanket stitches, I believe, on her machine, or at least it looks like it's done by machine. It's so well done. Okay, then going down on number 70. How you doing, Kaylee?
Good.
Yeah?
Risk 70.
Yeah, we're going to 70. Dublin by Stacy Martin, Burlington, Wisconsin. Quilted by Corner to Corner. While at a local quilt show, I was attracted to the Dublin quilt that had been entered. I am not a big fan of scrappy quilts, but I found this one attractive. This got me thinking about my overflowing scrap drawers, and I decided that I was going to move out all my comfort zone and try this quilt. The pieces on the pattern are so small, all my scrap pieces would work. Many of my scraps are smaller in style and color, so I was able to create a scrappy quilt, yet give an organized look.
Yeah.
Then we have number 112. Scrappy Civil War Stars by Audrey Sikora, North Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. The pattern, strips and stars, and is quilted by Colette Yeager. After accumulating a healthy stash of Civil War fabrics and scraps, I kept my eye open for various patterns to showcase them well. When I came across this pattern in Annie's Quilting Let's Get Scrappy book, I knew it was perfect for all the tiny prints. My favorite daughter, my other favorite daughter, and I had exchanged Civil War 9 patches a couple years ago, and those were used as well. This is my first entry into a primitive gathering show. I am excited to be a part of all the scrappy beauty. Yes, this is definitely a fun quilt as well. So thank you for this entry. And then we have, this was left over from my retreat, so we'll just move these out of the way so you can see more. Okay, 102 is made by, it's called Candy Striper by Vicki Laporte, Rothschild, Wisconsin, and it was quilted by Vicki as well. This scrappy quilt is in honor of my grandmother, Evelyn. She taught me to sew and quilt at 10 years old. She was a seamstress, sewing many wedding dresses and other bridal accessories. Each grandchild received a quilt at birth and then again at their high school graduation. I spent many hours with her. The majority of their quilts at home and at their cottage on Birch Lake were all scrappy. I would lay on them for hours trying to figure out why one color was placed next to another that didn't coordinate. Now I know. The scrappy quilt. This is beautiful. Again, just love, love, love scrap quilts. Can't get enough of them. Great way to showcase them in those little log cabins. Then we have number 52, and its name is Finally Finished. That's a good name, Edith Hubbard from St. Charles, Illinois. It's a mystery quilt and is quilted by Edith herself. This year I have made a point to finish UFOs. Thanks to Lisa, this came to the top of the list. A local quilt shop had a year-long mystery. Buy some fabrics or notions at the store and you will also receive a packet of fabric and instruction for that month. It was truly a scrap quilt. All the fabrics were different and not of uniform shape. I made all my blocks but never sewed them together until this summer. Couldn't even find the pattern, so I just sewed them together and quilted it. One more UFO complete. Thank you, Edith, for this wonderful quilt, and we're glad that you have one less UFO. Okay, let's go around here to number 92. So Kaylee will come around. Again, another quilt that kept me up for not giving it a ribbon. All right, so this one Rainbow Surprise by Kelly Cushman from Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Rainbow Surprise is quilted by Kelly herself. Making this scrappy quilt just felt right. I was able to reminisce on so many past projects and see how it all came together again. I learned to go with my gut on color, scrap placement, and not overthink it. I was going to keep track of the number of fabrics, but I gave up after a while. It was a nice surprise to see how all the different fabrics work together. It was also a surprise that my scrap bins are still pretty full. My granddaughters helped name the quilt because of all the colors. Again, Kelly, this broke my heart not to give it a ribbon. I just want you to know that. Okay. Then over here we have 119, Graham's Orphans Adopted. Now, I want to say that this might be the biggest quilt I've ever hung in the quilt show. Obviously there's one wider, but I don't think there's one bigger or longer. Graham's Orphan Adopted. Therese Bovee from Fitchburg, Wisconsin, and it is quilted by Kelly Moore from More Than a Stitch. This is a story of the German orphans. Graham passed away in 1998, and I inherited all the orphans in 2005. They lived under my sewing desk until May of 2025. Anywho, it was time to begin the adoption process. So off to the wonky adoption center. The orphans were a hot mess. Some with odd personalities, some tattoos, parentheses, indelible marker, some weak, worn out and needing nutrition, interfacing support, and others with birthmarks, scorched. There are many weeks of analysis paralysis as I went through the wonky adoption center. How can I adopt so many orphans that do not play well together? Playpens, aka borders. All right, so just look at how fun this is. Again, it was hard not to give this a ribbon, but look at this. Like there's one missing, but that didn't mean it couldn't be part of the quilt. So these are a bunch of orphan blocks that looks like Grandma had made, and she just kind of set them apart. Like maybe she was doing the block that came in the newspaper at that time, and she just set them aside. But Therese, you did a fabulous job. I'm so happy I got to take your photo in front of your quilt. I think this was you that did this. She has this beautiful binding on it as well. Pretty purple color, but you could stand and look at all the fabrics in this quilt, and I just love that it's recycled from old orphan blocks. And I love your story too. It's the first time I read it, Therese. The back of Matt's quilt. All right, so this is the one that greets you when you come in. It's like full dead on center. But what's funny is when I was looking at this quilt, I'm like, why is there a flannel binding on this quilt? Because there's no flannel on this side. And then when you turned it around, it's a whole nother quilt. Isn't that spectacular? So I think that might have played a little part in that third place ribbon that he got. But I love surprises like that. So remember, when you are making backing, that you can use some orphan blocks or quilts left over from blocks left over from quilts that you maybe didn't finish. So it's a great idea to put that one on the back. We really love that. All right, let's go on. Number 69 here is, again, all over pattern Lace of the North Winds by Tia Otto, Menasha, Wisconsin, and it is quilted by her as well. While at Primitive Gatherings for fabric, I fell in love with the deep red fabric from Lisa's Pumpkin Spice release. I was so smitten with the color of red that I decided to design a quilt. The artist in me moves contrast, light and dark, warm and cool tones. Also, I purchased ice blue fabrics to create interest. After drawing out several designs, I settled on this quilt design. The quilt is made up of 108-inch blocks, 5 different designs. There are 1,001 fabrics showcased in this quilt. This is a 4th quilt I've designed and pieced together this year. So congratulations, Tia, it's beautiful. And then we have number 78. And Sunny Lanes is by Rebecca Lomasney from Greenwood, Indiana. And the pattern is the same name, and Becky quilted it as well. In 2009, I took a class with Pat Spaeth. She and Charlene Thody had designed quilts based on 5-inch squares. My stash was plentiful, so I had great time cutting 5-inch squares for this king-size quilt. With no deadline, it got slowly pieced over several years, then disappeared into my stack of tops to be quilted. When Lisa announced this challenge, I remembered this quilt and loaded it on my Q20 on a frame. I challenged myself to use very dense hand-guided pantograph. It is not perfect, but I really like the density of the quilt. Yes, it's got a beautiful kind of feather overall design. Great job, Rebecca. And then we have this beautiful star quilt below it. All right. And this one is number 80, Scrap Stella by Gloria Ann Wiesen, Brookfield, Wisconsin. The pattern is called Stella, and it was quilted by Primitive Gatherings. This is only the 4th quilt I have made. I have been sewing since I was 10 and collected decades of fabric. It was exciting and fun to put them together in this quilt. I used almost 200 unique fabrics. It is not perfect, but it is colorful and fun. And because it's so limited there, I'm going to open this one up as well. I want to show this one because you can see a lot on those, but this one, again, and you can see all the stars. So great job. Oh, I got to go this way. Okay. All right, now we're going to go to number 55 here, which is Diamonds Take Forever. Yes, they do, by Maria Hansen, New London, Minnesota. And it was also quilted by Maria, and she is the lucky winner of a first place blue ribbon. I attended a Primitive Gatherings retreat in March of 2022. Lisa had an antique quilt that lit a spark in me. I went home and started pulling Brenda Riddle scraps and fabrics. By May, I'd put together 8 diamonds, and then it disappeared in the pile of projects. In April of this year, I pulled out the diamonds. I had cut enough fabric for a king-size quilt, and I was pretty sure I'd never finish it. I can honestly say that paper piecing diamonds was all about what I did for 6 months. And by paper piecing, I think she means English paper piecing. So this is all stitched by hand, I'm pretty sure. There are 89 diamonds plus 5 half diamonds. That is 4,466 hexagons plus all the red framing pieces. And she had to draft the pattern herself. So Maria, this is stunning, and we absolutely love it. It is definitely a showstopper. Okay, we have one more. Should we go here? All right, we have one more on this half of the room. Number 39 is Christmas Tree Stroll by Susan Carr, Huntington Beach, California. Forest Stroll is the name of the pattern, and it was also quilted by Susan. This quilt is my first scrap quilt. I use red and green scraps from quilts I have made. Each block is unique fabric for a tree and background for a total of 360 unique fabrics with very little brown scraps. I purchased 3 and used 1 for each size tree. It was a challenge to make for sure. I didn't use a repeat background fabric. I started cutting a 2.5-inch square for comparison as I cut each fabric. The binding became scrappy as well when I couldn't decide red or green. I am so happy how this quilt turned out. Yes, we loved it too. It is beautiful hanging here. Perfect time of year right now. Okay, let's go 14. Grammy's Stash 2025, Michelle Green, Fort Wayne, Indiana, and it was also quilted by Michelle. My mother passed away in August of 2023. She had been a quilter for over 40 years. She left me a treasure of fabric, more than I could use in a couple of lifetimes, considering I also have my own well-stocked stash. I decided I would make each of my 4 children and maybe grandchildren a scrappy quilt using as many fabrics as suited the pattern. This is the first of those quilts. The top contains 101 different fabrics. I am hoping that by doing these quilts I will feel more able to share some of the leftovers without feeling like I am just discarding something she loved. Took time to curate and got so much joy from. She shared so much of her quilting knowledge with me. I miss her daily and hope that this quilt and the ones to come will be a testament to the legacy she has left behind. Yes, Michelle, I know what you're talking about. When our mothers go away, we really realize what we are going to be missing, and every time I think about cooking something, I also think of my mother as well. Okay, so all right, let's go on to 21. I think this is the first big award that we're going to talk about today, and when I chose these big awards, it means they are like above and beyond the first place, right? They get a special award. Still Crazy by Christine Mack from Leesburg, Virginia. I hope I said that right, Christine. My personal challenge for this quilt was to use fabrics, patterns, embellishment already in my stash. Having purchased my Crazy Life pattern 2 years ago at PG, I realized it was the perfect setting for a set of 46 different floral cigarette silks sold within packs of cigarettes in the 1920s and 30s as free gifts, gifted to me years ago. The colorful background fabrics are linens, shot cottons, and various silks I've collected over the years. The various wools are used from my rug hooking stash. In total, over 275 fabrics were used in this quilt. And this one got most creative, if I didn't mention that yet. But it's just, you know, one, I really love it because it's one of my designs that I have done. And two, it's just so unique how she stitched those and making use of something that was from over 100 years ago just warms my heart. So we love this quilt. Okay, number 98. We are moving on here. This one, again, beautiful, beautiful. Red Kaleido Stars by Jen Block, Deerfield, Wisconsin. Delafield, sorry, and quilted by Jen Block herself. Being a relatively new quilter, I didn't have a large scrap stash to pull from, so I spent the first 8 months of the year gathering what scraps I did have, raiding my Charm Square collection and buying scrap bags and new fabric during the Wisconsin shop hop. I am pretty sure I have way more scraps now than I did when I started this project. The quilting is what I called fancy stitch quilting, a technique I use to quilt most of my quilt. It is small, not to be beautiful needlework of the 1980s crazy quilts that I admire. So instead of she quilted with the crazy stitches, all 3 layers together on her machine. So that was pretty fabulous idea. Good job, Jen. Number 64. Rustic Charm. We should pull this one open as well. There's not as much showing on this one. Michelle Larson from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and it was from the APQ 8 to 19 issue, and it was quilted by Mary Ainge. I decided to do this quilt because it caught my eye. I like scrappy look, but with a pattern. It was nice making the star points uneven. I didn't have to worry about the perfect points. Thought it would be nice to use up some stash, but hardly put a dent in it. All right, let's show Michelle's quilt full out. Give ourselves a little break here and my voice from talking. All right, here's the full quilt. Super fun. I don't think I've ever seen this pattern. As long as we're here, let's show this one too. All right, let's show this one too. That's so beautiful.
All right.
And don't worry, our floor just got cleaned. Everybody's out of here for the rest of the year. They just scrubbed her up. Alrighty, next up, 106 is from Joanne Huddock from Tunkhannock, Pennsylvania, and it is quilted by Deb Hagerby. I am usually not a scrap quilt maker, but I was drawn to making 9 patches with my scraps. The remainder of my scraps were given away. I do love it, though my brain wanted controlled Scrappy. Check out the backing. It's APG wide back. The backing is a cheater hexie. See that? Those make awesome backs. And it must have came 108 wide. Nice. Number 19 is called 26 by Felicia Goki, Bailey, Colorado, and it was also quilted by Felicia as well. Scrap quilts are my favorite quilts. I named this 26 for 2 reasons. I've been quilting 26 years this year, 2025, and 26 is my favorite number. The interior of the quilt contains 26 tumbling blocks, some from fabric from the beginning of my quilting journey. I always have templates on my cutting table, so when I have leftover fabric from a project, I cut it up into usable pieces and store them until I'm ready to use them. Revisiting the fabrics as I was creating 26 brought back fun memories of past projects. Love that idea of always cutting as you go. And then next up we have number 42. So let me just kind of spread it out here. Looks like a Bargello. 42. Quilt of Many Colors by Sherry Smith, Greenwood, Wisconsin. Rolling Prairie Quilt of Many Colors is the pattern name, and it was quilted by Sherry Sweeney. Years ago when I owned a quilt shop, I saw this pattern in a magazine a customer shared, All People Quilt. I then started saving strips from quilts I have made knowing I would make this someday. When I heard about the Scrappy theme, I knew it was time. This quilt makes me smile as I see someone's quilt every time I look at it. If I were to make it again, I would starch. I could not with this one, as many of the strips were already cut 2 inches as I gathered them. Even if it's not perfect, it still brings me joy. For sure, it is so beautiful. All done. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of move that one aside and bring out the next one here. All right, number 24. We have... It looks like something or Dublin. I can't, 6XI or Dublin by Joe Stanley, Atmore, Alabama. Quilted by Tina Morgan. I wanted to use up as many batik scraps as I could in a quilt for my parents. I've counted over 75 different pieces. Reminds me of all the quilts I have made. I love this beautiful big one that she's got in there that repeats. I think that makes the quilt all come together so nicely. And then we have another one here, another log cabin with these fussy cut sweet little bees in there. So let me find number 40. Quilt Bee Gathering by Tony Rosinski from Yorkville, New York. Log cabin quilt blocks quilted by C. Culver. Inspired by a photo in an older American patchwork and quilting magazine, I thought a log cabin quilt would be perfect entry for the Scrappy Quilt Show. It was fun and challenging to collect enough scraps to use in the pattern, but the challenge was met and cutting and sewing began. Thinking about what to use as a center block while at a quilt retreat with friends, the theme of Quilting Bee came to mind. A friend had bee fabric and Quilt Bee Gathering was created. Backing fabric is a nod to quilting being a universal language. Oh, look at that. Super cool back. Very nice. All right, next up, we have another beautiful, bright, scrappy quilt here. Number 107. Okay, Good Fortune by Regina Stanton, Sweet Valley, Pennsylvania. The pattern name is the same as she named it, and it was quilted by Debbie Hograby. I hope this quilt would help use up some of my very large stash of scraps, but it seemed as if the scraps just kept multiplying. I really enjoy making scrap quilts. Beautiful, beautiful quilt. Good job, Regina. And then we have number 47, so we'll spread that one out. This one looks like it has like an African color tone to it. 47, let's see what the quilt maker says. Autumn Pass by Deborah Kolar, Wixom, Michigan. Pattern is called Bitcoin, quilted by Deborah Kolar. Autumn Pass is pieced from more than 120 different fabric scrap gathered over 30 years of quilting. Each strip holds a memory, a remnant of past projects stitched together into something new. This quilt symbolizes the way our days stack up upon another, day after day, week after week, each unique, yet part of a larger whole. For me, it is a reminder to make each day count so that in the end, life becomes a rich and beautiful tapestry or quilt. That was my addition. Beautiful quilt, Deborah. Thank you for sharing this one with us. Okay, we're going to come back up over here, and we have a couple up high again. Entry 71 is Scrappy Disappearing 9 Patch by Shannon Olson, Burlington, Wisconsin. And it was quilted by Corner to Corner Quilting. Scrappy is out of my normal, so this was a challenge. I had a stash of 5-inch squares cut and leftover yardage. So with inspiration from Donna Jordan's pattern, I used those 5-inch squares. It turns out to be a form of a memory quilt since I can remember the quilts these squares came from. Best part of Scrappy Quilting is visiting all the quilts you've made with them. 49 is a wonderful, another Scrappy, Pass the Chips by Mickey Pagel, Almond, Wisconsin. So Many Strips is the pattern, and it was quilted by Sandy Falk, Rose Hill Quilting. Quilting a long cherished tradition has many styles that have merged over time. The potato chip quilt stands out for its whimsical name and the dynamic designs. The term is not a reference to potato chips themselves. It reflects the playful and effortless nature of creating this quilt. A craft so addictive that, like snacking on potato chips, you may find it hard to stop at just one. This pattern was featured in the April 2019 issue of American Patchwork and Quilting. I started making the quilt in 2020, my COVID quilt, and completed it in spring of 2025. All right, so we have a bunch of quilts here in the corner, starting with 37. Buggy Wheels by Kimberly Shell, Mount Joy, Pennsylvania. The finishing stitch by Jean is who quilted it. This quilt is named Buggy Wheels, was on my bucket list since 2005 when featured in the American Patchwork magazine. I kept putting off making this quilt knowing it'd be really challenging my aging eye set to make so many perfect points. There are over 800 half-square triangles. Scrappy quilts are my jam. As an avid collector of Pambuda fabrics, I combined a number of her collection and used them exclusively in this quilt. I am thrilled to give it a go, and this is one of my favorites I've made over the past 32 years. So I think we need to, again, display this one full out and give it a good look over here. 800, and it's not even that big. So gorgeous. Great job using the values of the light against the darks. All right, so I have two twin quilts here. This was a pattern that we did as a summer block of the week years ago. So let's see what they have to say. Starlit Skies. So number 45 is Carol Shallock from Marshfield, Wisconsin. and it was quilted by Sue Haydock. I wanted to use scrap fabrics and saw the picture of Starlight Skies on Facebook. It was a perfect solution for my dilemma. I ordered the pattern from Primitive Gatherings and started cutting for quite a while. I counted 5,752 pieces in this quilt. The most time-consuming part of this project was the tiny triangles in the cornerstones. It was displayed at Peacemaker's Quilt Show in Marshfield, Wisconsin. Claudine Hansen saw it there and asked if I would be interested in putting in the 2024 Quilt Art Engagement Calendar. I gladly agreed and it was selected. Congratulations, Carol. And then we have its twin, number 100. Okay, Starlit Skies by Pam Mueller, Rosemount, Minnesota, quilted by Mary Hubert, Between Friends Quilting. I signed up for the 2017 block of the week named Starlit Skies. I knew this quilt would be challenging as I was new to sewing with smaller pieces, and I was motivated at the beginning, but then before I knew it, it was 2025. It took me 8 years to finish, but that's okay. I enjoyed the journey and the process. Yes, isn't it great? So here's the same quilt. One has dark setting triangles and the other one has light like the background. So you see the same quilt, but just two different ways that it is finished. Number 82, I know whose this is. This is Yolanda Zoe, I'm not going to try her last name here, Takahashi from Dagnett, Michigan. Wrapped in Love it is called, and the pattern is called Crazy Remnants, and it is quilted by Harold Albright. Wrapped in Love is a vibrant mixture of colors and patterns. Each piece tells a story of the power of love and countless hours to find the perfect piece of fabric. The joy of creating that special gift of love given to a loved one or friend. Now I hold in my possession memories of the years gone by, the fabrics that went into each quilt. Inspired by Joseph's coat of many colors, also Dolly Parton's iconic song. Tom and I visited Dollywood in 2021. Thank you, my friends, for letting me be a part of your memories. All right, let's show Zoe's quilt. There you go. Isn't it beautiful? All right. All right, going up high, number 75. This is a stunner as well. Again, another quilt that could have easily gotten a ribbon. Let's see, Patches and Pomegranates. Sherry Sweeney, Appleton, Wisconsin, and it was quilted by Sherry as well. I stumbled upon this quilt on Pinterest. I started piecing the 9 patches using scraps from prior quilts and added a few charm packs along the way. I had decided I wanted 3-inch blocks before finding the actual pattern. Finding the right fabric for the alternating blocks proved to be a challenge. I think I purchased 3 different fabrics before finding the one I finally used. I modified the pattern, making it larger and replacing needle turn apple clay with wool. That's a lot to talk about. Good job, Sherry. Again, it was spectacular. Number 2 is from Delightful from Cindy L. Botts, Warsaw, New York. Quilted by Anne Marie Jacobs. I've been making scrappy quilts for a while and started using black and white pieces of fabric to create different effects in the quilt. When I heard about your quilt show, I just knew I had to create a scrappy 4-patch with black and white to set off the 4 patches. It is completely my design and I think it's delightful. Any similarity to any other designs is completely by chance and many years of looking at and making quilts. Yes, it is beautiful. Good job on using lots of fabrics. Okay, so now we're going to go into some minis here. So our first mini is number 11. Victorian Garden Party by Lori Landry from Menominee, Michigan. And it was quilted by Lori as well. I took this show as homage to the good old days by using the 1800s Victorian woman in her garden wearing a huge hat with a huge plume. I love to garden and use plenty of floral fabrics. This quilt has 98 florals in the half square triangles and a few more for the applique, facial features and binding. Embellished with silk ribbon trim, flower charms, and buttons. So congratulations, Lori, on your second place in the miniature category. And then we have number 59. 59 is called Cornered 9-Patch by Kathy Blockhat from Mankato, Minnesota. And it is a Primitive Gatherings Cornered 9-Patch pattern. And quilted by Kathy as well. I save all my scraps, even the 1-inch scraps. When I saw this little Primitive Gatherings pattern, I knew I had to make it. I pulled over 85 different scraps to make this mini. I just love the scrappy feel. Thank you for making this. We love this fun quilt. All right, then number 57 is our third place winner, Jack's Shirts and Ties. Katherine Crowley Peckham from Menasha, Wisconsin. The pattern is Jack's Chain, also known as Rosalia's Flower Garden, 1939, and quilted by Katherine as well. I am an avid collector of men's ties, using them in quilts, slow stitching, and upcycled clothing. My Jack's Chain interpretation pays homage to the quilt sewn in the mid-1800s by Belle Entrekin, my great-great-grandmother. Belle's use of upcycled clothing was my inspiration. I wanted the challenge of using traditional piecing with Y-seams. Techniques used were primarily hand piecing, English paper piecing, applique, and hand quilting. 81 different fabrics were utilized. Thanks, Grandma. Very nice to have this as a memory piece to you. Thank you for sharing it. It is truly awesome. I just kept looking at it. All right, number 124 is called Skip to My Lou by Elaine Brotrup, Appleton, Wisconsin, and is quilted by Elaine as well. I've been wanting to try an Irish chain style quilt and came across this scrappy pattern in Kim Deal's book of Simple Whatnots too. Since I have only been quilting a few years, I didn't have a ton of scraps to use yet, so I also cut small squares out of some fat quarter stash I have acquired and was surprised that they came up with about 100 different fabrics. My fabrics are not the muted tones Kim Deal typically uses, so I opted for the black and white stars and charcoal Irish chain to contrast. Nice quilt. All right, next up, 129 is Traditional Trees by Dee Johnson, Mankato, Minnesota. Quilted by her as well. Inspired by Miniature Quilt magazine circa 1999, Sally Collins, I made mine a little smaller, used Primitive Gatherings 1/2-inch triangle paper. This was the perfect pattern to use 75 different blue fabrics from my scrap bin. What does that say about my stash of blue fabrics? That you love blue, I would guess. I used Primitive Gatherings triangle papers, starched as suggested by Lisa for my love of accuracy. My mini quilts are displayed on rails like Lisa used for her mini quilts and hung down my hallway. Beautiful quilts. That took some time to do, but can easily be done with those triangle papers. Next up, we have number 41. Quilt Bee Gathering, Scrappy, Oklahoma by Wendy Redland, Center City, Minnesota. And it was quilted by Wendy as well. It was the summer of 1994. I had just graduated from UW Stout and was costuming a production of Oklahoma. I wasn't a quilter yet, but something told me to keep the fabric scraps from all the costumes we created. Now a quilter, but not usually a scrap gal, that bag of costume scraps was the perfect fit to try my hand at a scrappy quilt. And the Road to Oklahoma block in the star layout couldn't have been better. This has been a wonderfully fun challenge to stretch my quilting journey. I even hand quilted for the first time. Yes, thank you so much. Beautiful, beautiful. All these quilts are so beautiful. 32, Scrappy Crossings by Lorraine Wizolowski from Pine City, New York. The pattern Flying Geese Table Runner. And it was quilted by Deb Sanford. When Lisa announced the quilt show was going to be scrappy, I was very excited. My quilt friends gave me their cut off triangles. After some thought, I decided on paper piece flying geese. Needed more background, so I bought a charm pack from PG, decided on a wall hanging, and my creation is called Scrappy Crossings. Just lovely. Beautiful light and dark value in that one as well. 121 is up next. Sunday Leftovers by Mary King, Linden, Washington. Simple Whatnots 4 mystery stitch along, and it's also quilted by Mary. I stitched this mini quilt mainly on Sunday afternoon using bits and pieces from my stash, 241 different fabrics. Lovely. And then we have number 17. Another 12 Days by Barb Schneider. Hot Springs Village, Arkansas. It's Arkansas or Arizona? I think it's Arizona. AR?
No, it's Arkansas.
Arkansas. One of those two. Okay. Pattern is Another 12 Days, and it was quilted by Barb as well. I constructed this Susan quilt pattern using shared scraps from my quilting friends and combining these with my own leftover fabrics. Our different tastes in fabrics make this a fun and memorable wall hanging. I love the busy look and the use of over 100 scraps. This was machine pieced, machine appliqued, and quilted on my home sewing machine. Let's go here. This was hanging in the window, not above that. All right, let's go here. Number 34. This one. Time for Me to Fly by Diane Schumann, Fredonia, Wisconsin. Pattern is from Hayride from Simple Whatnots 4, and it was quilted by Kathy Anderson. I've always been drawn to Kim Deal's designs, which seem to be perfect match for making a scrappy quilt. I had fun picking out the different pieces of fabric from my stash, my aunt's stash, and some that were new. The title, Time for Me to Fly, is based on my life. After 41 years of teaching, I'm moving on to a new stage in my life, which is sure to include lots of quilting and other crafts. Yes, beautiful, Diane. We love this. I love all the different fabrics. I love the cheddar. Awesome, awesome. Okay, Stars for Amy. Joanne O'Connell from Ashwaubenon, Wisconsin, and Colleen Meyer from Kiel, Wisconsin. And the pattern is called Stars in the Garden. Our quilt came about when a special friend gifted us with our favorite kind of fabrics, Japanese. She loved this particular piece, so we decided to create it for her because of her generosity. At over 1,000 pieces, this English paper piece design with 3/8 inch hexes took 3.5 years to complete. The pattern is called Stars in the Garden by Jill Shawless of Yellow Creek Quilts. The frame was made by Scott Stanchik from an old antique door frame. Scott is our carpenter here, so he made that out of that. So that is such a special thing, and it has the blue ribbon on it for how beautiful it is. Okay, so let's go. Number 56. Now I kind of recognize these fabrics. Let's just see what they have to say. It's called Lisa's Logs by Pat Hurlbut, Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, and is quilted by Pat herself. This quilt started when my friend Lisa J. and I came to Purge and Splurge Quilters Exchange event at Primitive Gatherings in the summer of 2024. Lisa Bongean had a few bags of leftover 1 to 2 inch wide strips of blues and whites. I love making scrap quilts, and this treasure was just shouted that it wanted to be a log cabin quilt. Lisa and Lisa both started talking, and when they said the same thing, that this should be a log cabin, I knew I wanted to create this quilt. I worked on the squares at the gathering in May of 2025. So this is so spectacular. Like, even the binding is all of those strips that she sewed together to stitch that binding on. So every bit of this quilt was definitely scraps from, like she said, from 1 to 2 inches. Look at this beautiful one. This was a favorite of a lot of people at the quilt show. And it belongs to Lisa Jonkins. It is called I Spy, and Lisa's from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The pattern, color wash style quilt, and it was quilted by Lisa herself. I started quilting in April of 2022, so this quilt represents many firsts for me. It is my first scrap quilt, my first flange binding, my first color wash, and my first quilt show. It has over 300 scrappy pieces of fabric and about 40 different novelty fabrics. I decided to call this quilt I Spy because of the novelty fabrics that I used. I have Donut Sprinkles, Betty Boop, and the Queen of Hearts, to name a few. Can you find them all? I chose a group of world-renowned amateur detectives for my backing. Can you guess who they are? Can you move that? Here, oh, look it, there just happens to be, oh, Scooby-Doo. Awesome. Somebody convenient put that little step stool there. All right, look at this mama. Such a showstopper here we got. This is kind of showstopper row here. Lots of big awards in this row. So this one is called The Flower Garden by Kathy Meyer from Larson, Wisconsin. And it was quilted by Wendy Fuller. This was my first needle turn project. As a good quilter friend told me when I said, I don't know how to needle turn, she said, you will by the time you're done with this. I guess I figured it out. I made this for my daughter's wedding. She loves it. Wendy Fuller did an awesome, amazing job doing the long arm quilting. We all just love it, yes. Obviously, everybody else who came through the door loved it as well. Congratulations, Kathy, on both your first place and viewer's choice. It is quite a lot going on in here, all the different background quilting going on. Super unique and lots of bright flowers. Okay, this is one of my favorites right here. So it got Best Workmanship, and it is called Dresden Bloom by Lynn Lahr, Waverly, Iowa. And it is quilted by Lynn herself, by hand. This big quilt, all by little tiny heirloom hand quilting, not big stitch. All right, so Lynn says, this quilt shows off my love of scrap quilts. Truly a labor of love. I did all the applique by hand and hand quilted this beautiful quilt. I really like the contemporary dimensional Dresdens. They truly bloom on this quilt. The applique flowers really enhance the beauty. I did much of the handwork during my lunch break when I was still working. So if you can kind of see, these guys here are dimensional. So see how they kind of come in there? Super cool. So congratulations, Lynn, best hand workmanship. Number 46 is called Geese in the Garden by Kathy Decker, Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Pattern, Wild and Goosey and Moon Garden. Quilted by Kathy Decker herself. And she has won the Long Arm Quilting Award. I had a great time piecing this quilt. The scrap blocks are Bonnie Hunter's Wild and Goosey paper piece blocks, each containing 52 small scraps, mostly bonus triangles from decades of quilting. The applique border flowers are based on Moon Garden by Primitive Gatherings. The layout design was inspired by the Northwest Suburban Quilt Guild, Arlington Heights, Illinois. The quilting is my original design, inspired by classes with Beth Ann Nemish and Julia Quiltoff. So this was just hands down, you know, best long arm, and she did it herself, which is kind of amazing too, because most quilts are quilted by somebody else. So when you can find one as well done as this, they deserve a big, big, big ribbon. All right. We have these two beautiful ones here next. Let's start with 6-7, the high one. This one is called Primitive Picnic Quilt by Carrie Cook, Appleton, Wisconsin. And Wendy Fuller is the one who did the quilting on it. This pattern is fantastic. It's so versatile and looks great in a variety of colorways. My sister-in-law made several of these quilts, and each time we looked at the finished quilt, we both said we wished it was bigger. Bought the pattern and my quilt kept growing. So yes, it's on a 17-foot ladder here. So it's a straight strips here and then the checkerboard block. So good job on the border applications on this as well. And then we have number 23, which just happens to be my birth number. I love number 23. My Favorite Baskets by Lois Wilhelm, Weston, Wisconsin. Trick or Treat is the name of the pattern, and it was quilted by Jan Meacham. The quilt was inspired by Trick or Treat, a quilt by Barb Adams in her 2008 book, When the Cold Wind Blows. My version is all baskets set on point with a border. It is not the same basket because it is one piece, appliqued by hand on the background square. There are 98 baskets, all different fabrics on a variety of cream fabrics. I started the blocks in September of 23, finished late 24. It is long arm quilted, free guided by Jan Meacham from Gleason, Wisconsin, May of 2025. Up high, we have 108, Long Time Gone, Laurel Chambers, Rockwell, Texas. And it is quilted by Laurel herself. The pattern was a challenge I set for my small quilting group. The rule was to make the quilt entirely from our stash. We could swap fabrics with each other, but no buying anything new. We followed Jen Kingwell's mantra, if 10 fabrics don't match, throw in 100. I absolutely love how mine turned out. 3 of the 6 of us finished within the 12 months we gave ourselves. It was such a fun project, full of creative challenges, laughter, and time spent together. That made it truly special. Yes, it is truly, truly special. Beautiful, beautiful quilt. Then we have 63. Now remember, these quilts had to be done by October 31st. Jean Fisher's 8,000 Pieces is the name of this, and you will recognize this as our quilt-along quilt. So somebody had to sew her fingers off to get this thing done before the quilt show. The pattern is Unity Quilt-Along, or it is originated from Joyce Weeks, and it's her quilt that we recreated, a year-long quilt-along in 25. So look for our next year's quilt-along. We will be starting more. In December of 24, my husband and I visited Primitive Gatherings to see the blue and white quilt show at the gathering. I was able to talk to Lisa that day about upcoming Unity Quilt-Along for 2025, and I expressed my interest in having my version of Unity for the 2025 Scrappy show. This was actually my first Scrappy quilt I have ever made. So far, I have made 2 versions of this quilt with plans to make many more. I just love this design. So this one is Lisa's choice, and obviously I love it because of all the scrap. I love this use of this gray cross weave in here, and I just love how hard she had to sew to get this done, and she keeps making more. So yes, I'm a little partial, and that's how judges are. So that's just the way it goes. Okay, come on over here. We did these already. All right, we did this one. So let's start here with number 3. Number 3, this is a stunner. This is a stunner, and it has won Judge's Choice. Scrappy Coins, Teresa Scott, Gillette, Wyoming. Scrappy Coins from Making Happy Quilts book, and it is quilted by Teresa herself. This quilt started as a block of the month through Homestead Hearth Quilt Store. I hand appliqued the circles, but assembled the quilt using the EPP technique. I made my machine quilted I made and machine quilted myself this king-size quilt, a bed runner and 2 pillowcases with leftover units. My friend from my quilt group, Quilt Chick, said that the quilt was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen and asked if I would will it to her. I told her I would make her one. Her quilt has my extra units. Wow, that's a pretty good friend. Look at all those beautiful little circles. That's just truly a labor of love. And that's why she was awarded Judge's Choice. All right. Next up, 118. When Life Gives You Scraps. Tina Plunk Quigley, Crete, Illinois. The pattern, pineapple block with leaf appliques. Quilted by Tina Plunk of South Oak Lane Quilts. I recently went through a span of life difficulties. I would retreat to my sewing room and mindlessly paper piece pineapple blocks from my mountain of scraps. Soon I had a big pile. The theme Scrap Quilts was announced for the 2025 show, and my heart was happy. I pieced the blocks together and then on to the hand applique border. I long-armed it with using some of the techniques I learned at a 2024 retreat at Primitive Gatherings with Linda Hershka. Life isn't always easy and sometimes throws you scraps. I choose to take those scraps and make quilts. Good story. Thank you, Tina. Okay, over here. 89 is Miss Sunbonnet Sue. Let's see what she named it though. Friendship Blossoms by Debbie Chappell from Shepherd, Montana. And it was quilted by Brenda Dean. I had never imagined making a Sunbonnet Sue quilt, much less designing one. My Friendship Blossoms quilt was inspired by Lisa Bongean's quilt Among Friends and using Lori Holt's Sunbonnet Sue So Simple shapes. I love the idea of combining friendship stars with Sunbonnet Sues. Creating each girl was inspirational, mixing colors, patterns, decorative stitching, and embroidery thread, and adding the crocheted floral blossoms and tatted heart made by Mom Janice Brown. I didn't see that. The friendship stars joined by Sunbonnet Sue blocks together beautifully. This quilt is a celebration of friendship, creativity, and precious moments spent with people I love. So yes, it's spectacular use of fabric and scraps, many colors. And like I said, I'm not a fan of Sunbonnet Sue, but this made my heart sing, so I had to give it a big fat award, and it got Judge's Choice. Okay? Then let's go to number 91. This is one of them that I couldn't decide on first, so I gave both the quilts first. And it's called To Grandma's House We Go by Carol Mollers, Green, Iowa. It was quilted by Carol as well. The Grandma's Flower Garden block has always been a quilt block I have wanted to make. The PG Scrappy Quilt Contest was my opportunity to design and make a quilt using the block. I wanted to make a quilt with an Irish twist since my family is of Irish descent. I incorporated the 9-pass chain block and the snowflake style Grandma's Flower Garden block with lots of fabric. There are slightly over 1,500 half-inch hexagons in the quilt. Each hexagon and 9-patch blocks are different, just like there are no snowflakes that are the same. I love how the quilt turned out. The quilting on it is amazing. It's just spectacular. So this got a first place along with the big diamond antique recreation of Maria Hansen. So I couldn't decide between the two hexagon quilts, so I gave them both a first place. So that's just what you have to do sometimes. All right, let's go next over here to number 50. I Love Strippy Stars by Kay Nett, New Holstein, Wisconsin. American Outlander is the pattern, and it was quilted by Kay as well. When I saw the pattern for American Outlander on Lisa's American Gatherings, I knew it would be a perfect place to use my stash of flannel and homespun scraps. I started the quilt at home in spring of 23 and finished assembling it at Primitive Gatherings Retreat. Fellow retreaters helped me choose the caramel color setting fabric. I love how cozy the quilt turned out. The quilting pattern is free motion hearts and stars with ruler work in the strippy stars. This quilt was finished in November of 24. I love the strippy stars. Excuse me. Good job, Kay. And then here we have 87. 87, Stars Upon Stars by Pam Huggins, Wayland, Michigan. And it was quilted by Pam as well. This quilt has been on my bucket list for years. When Anita decided to do it as a quilt along, I decided it was the perfect time to give it a try. After one block, I thought I'd let it sit for a bit, but it stayed on my mind, so I tried a second one. One block a month sounded like a challenge I could commit to, so it became a goal. It was quite a challenge, and the block of the month idea went by the wayside to become an all-encompassing. I learned so much making this quilt. I bet you did. That is not a small feat with all that intricate piecing that needs to come together. Great job, Pam. Okay, 110 is a beautiful quilt. I remember this quilt before it hung, and I said this quilt needs to hang high because it's going to be so spectacular. So winning a third place, it's called So Many Stars by Cheryl Gaines, Yuba City, California. I've been to Yuba City. I did a quilt guild thing there one time. I remember driving through all those fruit trees. It was awesome. I knew it would take a lot of patience, but I really like the pattern. I enjoy making quilts that make me stay organized. It took 2,500 2.5-inch half squares. I didn't care for the white, a light blue, so I made another 800. I asked my husband what I should name it, and he said Insanity. Maybe he had the right idea. I don't quite know what. I didn't care for the white and light blue. Whatever, it's spectacular. We loved it. It would be perfect for next year's Red, White, and Blue show, but maybe a different one, Cheryl, okay? So I just gave you a clue to what was next year's show. So let's back up this way, Kaylee, and get this one nice and high here. Number 99, Stars and Stripes of Repo Time. From Leanne Prang, Williamsburg, Virginia, Poly Stars and Stripes and Tulip Harmony, quilted by L.A. Prangs. So that must be Leanne. In December of 16, I finished a quilt for my husband that used scrappy strips of Joe Morton fabric. I have had strips left, so the Scrappy Lemoyne star block, I figured out the diamond size, printed them out, and never made the blocks. When this contest was advertised, I decided it was time to get it done. I was going to make 20 blocks, but too many set-in seams. I made 12 and found a wool applique design, and I felt went with the strips and borders. Thanks for helping inspire me to finish my quilt. Yes, look at all those strips and all those star blocks. Beautifully done with the combination of wool applique and piecing. Choco Latte is number 76 by Barbara Faber of Rhinelander, Wisconsin. The pattern is called Brownstone, and it was quilted by Luke Neubauer. This quilt pattern is perfect to use up some of my fabric collection. It's called Brownstone, which is based off an antique quilt, but all I can see is Choco Latte. I've mixed reproduction fabrics with Cafe and chicken feet fabric. Fun to make, but barely used up my fabric collection, unfortunately. Well, we love it. All right. Coming this way, number 88. This one made my heart stop. So number 88 received a second place winner, and this one is called Girls Extended Retreat by Colleen Foley of Richland, Michigan. The pattern is called Girls Retreat, and Colleen also quilted it. Girls Retreat is one of the small quilts in Tara Lynn Darr's book, Small Treasures from Scraps. I kitted up several years ago, but didn't get to it until spring, winter of 2025. When I started it, I fell in love and thought it would be so cool to do it bigger. Of course, this meant I had to raid my scrap stash and make some additional purchases of reproduction fabrics. Tara's quilt has 42 X's. Mine has 648. Thus, I named it Girls Extended Retreat. It was a little challenging building it on the diagonal, but I really enjoyed it. I love scrappy quilts. So when I saw this, yeah, I knew it was a labor of love, because those things just don't go together easily. And therefore, like I said, I wonder if it uses fabric over and over again, or if there's just one of every one. We'll have to find out. Okay, here is one of the grand prize best of show that I picked as the winner. And what was funny is when I first looked at this quilt, I'm like, ooh, that's cool. And then when I had to pick best of show, I kept looking. And then I thought, you know what, this is very unique. So number 6, Aunt Joe's Garden by Lisa Rogers, Cedar City, Utah, quilted by Val Krieger. I discovered Aunt Joe's Garden Block of the Month at Quilt Crossing in Boise, Idaho while visiting my granddaughter the summer of 2015. It was a monthly kit for $5 that included the hexie papers and pre-cut fabric from Joe Morton. I subscribed for several years until I discovered fussy cutting from Temecula Quilt Company and Maggie McGuire's Garden. My hexies traveled with me on many road trips and flights to our kids' visits in California, Idaho, Georgia, and Kentucky. My hand-pieced 3/4 inch hexie quilt was finally completed in the fall of 22. So what I loved about it was the dark. So most of the grandmother's flower garden are always light or green or some form of 30s, pastel. So this really stuck out. And the handwork that's involved in it and the quilting is gorgeous on it and was very appropriate for the design. So therefore, to me, it just sung best of show. Okay, we'll be right back with the last one here in this room. So we have number 120, which I know very well. And it is called Memory of a Masterpiece by Carrie Weaver, Royston, Georgia. And it's a Primitive Gatherings Memory of a Masterpiece. We just used 2 colors, one red and one white. And Carrie made it with all of these scrappy happiness to them. I started this quilt in January 2025 as a New Year's resolution to get my scraps under control. I honestly never believed I would actually finish it. It seemed like it would be an impossible task. It took almost 8 months of trimming triangles before I started sewing blocks. I was so surprised and so excited how easily the blocks came together. I am so very proud of this quilt. My scraps are so much more organized these days too. And she does a little giggle there at the end. Congratulations, Carrie, on your 2nd place prize. 117 is Meet Me in the Middle by Carrie DeCuster from Kaukauna, Wisconsin. And it's called Meet Me in the Middle is the name of the pattern, and also Carrie quilted it. This quilt almost didn't happen. I wasn't a scrappy kind of girl at all. A dear friend encouraged me to make one. After I found a block I really liked, I thought, why not? I completed half the blocks and then suddenly lost that dear friend to cancer. My heart fell out of the project, but I could almost hear her voice nudging me, just get it done. One night I prayed asking God and my friend for a sign that this quilt was even meant to be. After adding 4 9-patch blocks right in the center, it clicked. It was a sign from God and from Sherry meeting me in the middle. That's a good story. So a lot of times, this is the first time I'm reading these descriptions, so it's fun to actually hear the stories behind them. All right, over here, we have 103, which was on the ladder here, but we pulled it off to show it more out. It's called Crimson Tides by Stephanie Mendez of Hillmar, California, and it was quilted by Debbie Sanders of Cloth and Quilts. Crafted in vibrant, scrappy style, the Crimson Tides quilt is a feast for the eyes. The classic 9-patch block is the foundation for this piece, appearing in 2 distinct color stories, bold crimson and white, and refreshing aqua, teal, and turquoise. The use of many low-volume prints adds a playful, collected feel, ensuring every glance reveals a new and delightful detail. That is like one of the best descriptions. You need to do this for a living. Because guess who does not like writing descriptions of her quilt? All right, let's go to number 83. I love this quilt. I put it here in the special place of honor we are in the dining room here at the gathering. Look at all those little skinny strips of fabric, using up lots of them. The Gum Wrapper Quilt by Carolyn Lochner, Ely, Iowa. The pattern is called Driftwood, and Carol also quilted it. When I saw the driftwood quilt pattern, I knew I wanted to make it. This is my adaptation of the pattern. I think the braid looks like gum wrapper chains I made as a child. Christmas is my favorite holiday, so I knew green and red would be the colors. Although my quilt journey is young, I am proud of how this quilt turned out. There are many imperfections, but I look forward to learning and quilting more. I want to thank Lisa for always promoting quilting of all levels of quilters. Her encouragement is contagious. Yes, and this is a stunning quilt for a beginner. This is not easy. This is all bias. All right, when you cut that, that's all bias. So I made one out of flannel, but mine were a lot wider than yours. So good job, Carolyn. I love this quilt. Then we have number 27, and this is beautiful fabrics. And it's called Rosy Garden by Carol Sands of Frisco, Texas. The pattern is called Tone It Down, and it is quilted by Maggie Honeyman. Making a pink quilt has been on my bucket list for a very long time. Add to that, using my favorite pattern design makes it perfect pairing. It has lots of small pieces, which is one of my favorite things about this design. Thank you for the opportunity to enter my quilt in PG 2025 Scrappy Quilt Show. Thank you, Carolyn. We can't do this without people like you entering your quilts, and that one is another gorgeous one. Then here we have 26, right in the same line on the same page, called Confidence by Sherilyn Hoker from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. The pattern is called Condense, and it is quilted by Sherilyn herself. I like this pattern because it was great to use up scraps. So I joined Edita's virtual class where she took us step-by-step on the construction of this quilt. The challenge was how to arrange them in a quilt. So I decided to do a gradation of color as best I could. I used a combination of scraps, 38 darks and 38 lights, all different for a total of 76 fabrics used. Perfect, just enough. And then look at this beautiful quilt right here. We pulled this one off as well so we can get a good shot of it. Now this is called Life by Marcia Beck, and she is from Burnett, Wisconsin, and it is also quilted by her as well. So you see all the beautiful big stitch quilting in there. So she has a story. I started making scrappy blocks in the spring, but then this summer life happened. I dedicate this work to my sister Barbara Turanova and to my neurosurgeon, Dr. Kenneth Reichert. They saved my life. Brenda encouraged me to get an MRI. Turns out I had a brain tumor and within 4 days was scheduled for surgery on July 18th. I have been through many weeks of therapy and I'm still able to quilt and sew. So I'm extremely grateful for my quilting hobby. I worked hard and was motivated to return to normal. Not yet 100%, but it will give me more time. So I did get to meet Marcia at the quilt show and she told me her story. And thank you, Marcia, for sharing that with me at the time. Beautiful job. I hope you continue and I hope all of your skills come back. Okay, look over here. 115, Grandmother's Garden by Jennifer George, New London, Wisconsin. And it's a grandmother's garden, and it was quilted by Jennifer herself. A friend of my mother gave me a shoebox filled with original 1930s fabric from the friend's father's apron company. How unique is that? I was given the fabric. To honor the 1930s fabric, I chose a quilt pattern made in the 1930s. So the grandmother's garden pattern it is. I did not have enough original fabric to make a queen-size quilt, so reproduction prints were added. The whites are modern prints and solid. The center is hand-pieced hexes. The borders are applique flowers, hand-sewn. I contacted the Historical Society in the town my mother lives in to see if the story was true. It is. So gorgeous, gorgeous. Thank you for remaking or re-putting those old quilt blocks or quilt fabrics into a new quilt. And then here we have 126, which is called Around the World with Stars by Maggie Michael, Tucson, Arizona, quilted by Maggie as well. I took a class to do a 10 Sisters grid piece quilt. We were to use 7 fabrics. Don't ever tell me to use so few fabrics. I used over 150 fabrics, maybe more. I wanted to make each on point block a different and unique color whirl. It all went together to work out well. Well, we agree. We love how beautiful this quilt is, and it is beautifully displayed here at the gathering where everybody looks at it every time they eat. 116, A Scrappy Flower Garden by Sue Druschke from Valders, Wisconsin, and quilted by Sherry Sweeney. The journey of a scrap flower garden began when I acquired the Kansas Troubled pattern checkerboard garden, knowing it would come alive with wool applique. When Lisa announced the theme of the 2025 show, it was time to get working, gathering fabric and wool. Most of the fabric was in my stash. More pinks were purchased to bring my vision to life. On a visit to Primitive Gatherings, I found bins of scrap wool for sale. Perfect colors to complete my quota of 75 different fabrics. I followed Lynn's piecing instructions. The flowers are my own design layout using Lisa's templates patterns for inspiration. Again, another beautiful quilt. I love this, how she separated the center with this quilting. All right, Sherry, good job on making this quilt sing. Number 66, the year I was born. I met Rebecca here the other day, and it is called Love Letter to Mom. And Rebecca Kermit Simcoe is from Weston, Wisconsin, and it is quilted by Teresa Pepper Lockney. Sorry, I apologize for these names. Love Letter to Mom, my first original design of a larger quilt, over 3 years to completion and made to honor the quilting legacy of my mom, Beverly. She taught me to sew when I was about 8 and then taught me to quilt when I was around 40. She made a smaller postage stamp quilt in her 70s. It was the inspiration for this scrap quilt. There are over 6,000 1.5-inch squares that came from my stash and hers as well. It is a true labor of love making this quilt in memory of my dear mother. And Rebecca told me that her mom did all of this beautiful hand stitching. And I think the birds were done on by machine. So there is just so much to look at on here. Very unique. Number 48 is a quilt called Garden Party by Joanne Blank of Appleton, Wisconsin. And it was quilted by Sue Hiddle. Love the Garden Party pattern by Laura Heine, but did it in hand applique. My favorite method of applique. Love the bigger pieces of fabric so it could showcase the tilde lines of fabric. I want to thank Sue Hiddle for her long arm quilting. She always makes my quilt look wonderful. Yes, and look at the use of this deeper gray to really pop off all those tilde fabrics. Big clunky shapes with all this pattern. It really looks so modern, even though these prints kind of seem like retro. But beautiful quilt, Joanne. Congratulations on your second place winner. And then, speaking of Sue Hiddle, we have Sue's quilt right here. Bow tie quilt block. And it was Sue Hiddle from Appleton, Wisconsin. She made the quilt and she also quilted it. I received the bow tie block quilt pattern in the first Primitive Gatherings quilt subscription box. I thought it would be a good pattern to use up my scraps. I worked on the bow ties for several years as leaders and enders. When Lisa announced the theme for this year's quilt show, I decided to make a smaller version of the quilt. It didn't make a dent in my scraps. Yes, Sue, I can imagine for how many years you've been quilting, it's not going to make a dent. Okay, let's move on to the next room. All right, coming down the hallway. You want a quick peek in here? Quick little peek into the room. So this is the sleeping part of the gathering where all the rooms, I call it the hotel hallway. So down this whole aisle is where all these beautiful quilts are being displayed. So let's talk here. Number 38, I just love this quilt. It is called Geese in My Garden by Lori DeVentier from Gettsville, New York. And the pattern is called Gathering Beautiful Roses, and it is quilted by Tara Tom of Town and Country Quilts. My quilt was inspired by a quilt seen in the Quilters newsletter magazine in April of 2006. I think I have this in my book of inspiration as well. I modified the size, the applique, and the number of blocks. I made my first version in 2014 and decided to remake it for this challenge with wool instead of cotton appliques for the flowers. It was a fun to go through my fabric stash and remember quilts gone by. Yes, so Kaylee, I'm sure you got beautiful close-ups of all the different wool appliques. Just a stunning quilt, and this was a first place in a category. And like I said, there are several firsts in here. And then we have another winner, number 62. And this is called So Scrappy. Carol Rice, Springfield, Illinois. The pattern is called Thimble Blossoms, and it was quilted by Yvonne Carrill of Zombie Quilters. My friends make fun of me because I save my wool scraps from all my projects. I asked Lisa if I could enter something using both my wool and flannel scraps, and it was approved. I chose this pattern from Buttermilk Basin because it would use a lot of my scraps. If you look closely, you will notice the reds are different, i.e. plaids, houndstooth, plain, etc. The black wool in the sewing machine is a piece left over from Live a Thankful Life. Matte. I added wool buttons to give me the count of 80 different fabrics. And like I said, I don't read these descriptions, but I counted to make sure she had enough fabrics because, you know, you never know, and I want people to follow the rules. But good job, Carol. This is a beautifully done quilt, and the quilting on here, hands down, spectacular. Let's do number 18. This is a pretty quilt. Point Addis in pink. Jeanette Huddapole from Geneva, Illinois. And it is quilted by Jeanette as well. This quilt started during a Jen Kingwell class at Primitive Gatherings 2 years ago. I picked up the Quilt Recipes book in the PG shop and dove in. Most of the blocks are hand-pieced in the Jen Kingwell preferred style. I free motion quilted the project on my domestic machine. The pattern reminded me of stereo speakers pumping out volume, so I played with different tones of shades of pink and orange to create the sound effect. Almost all the fabrics, including the low volume backgrounds, are from past quilt projects, except for a couple of Jen's newer prints. Again, spectacular. Love it. Then we have number 31, and it is called Oh My Stars by Ann Helbling, Kindred, North Dakota. The pattern is Chris Gailey's Blockheads Facebook group, Blockheads 5, and is quilted by Clem Buzik. The quilt is made from Moto-Block Heads patterns. I combine blocks from 5 and 6 block heads with a few from my block heads 1, 2, and 3 sprinkled in. I hope you take a closer look. Every block is fussy cut. See if you can find my little 1 1/8 inch 8 pointed star. I've used more than 100 fabrics to make the 84 blocks in the quilt. Okay, now we got to quick find it. Dun, 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 dun.
I found it. Right here.
Oh yeah, there we go. That's beautiful. Good job. Okay, 113. Dreaming of Wedding Rings by Clarissa Justman, Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and it is quilted by Colette Yeager, Wisco Quilts. About 1 year ago, I had a premonition that I needed to make my own double wedding ring quilt, just in case. Needless to say, 3 weeks later, I would meet my boyfriend, the very same who watched hours of shows with me as I cut pieces to this quilt. Every piece in this quilt is from a previous project I've completed and most likely given away. Fabulous, great story, Clarissa. 114, Posh Penelope by Lil Frankenkrug, Wisconsin, and is quilted by Lil herself. After 40 years of quilting and sewing, my stash has gotten out of hand. This pattern provided the fun and challenging way to put a dent in some of those scraps. Beautiful. I think, is that the same pattern as the one up high over there too? It looks beautiful though. Good job on all of those different quilt blocks. And then we have number 36, Timeless Tidbits from Lona Long, Kearney. When Cheryl Johnson of Temecula Quilt Company presented this quilt, I was smitten. I immediately bought the pattern, the center pink, green, and gold fabrics. I started this quilt in 23, but put it aside due to illness. I picked it up again and finished in January of 25. There are 193 fabrics, including the backing and the label. Some are new and some are very old, except for those purchased from Cheryl. They are all from my extensive reproduction quilt stash. The challenge was making sure the hourglass blocks were straight, so they are marching in rows across the quilt. I am so pleased to have accomplished it. Yes, it's so beautiful, and I love the traditional Baptist fan on there as well. Ocean Waves by Phyllis Ratz, Green Bay, Wisconsin, quilted by Phyllis as well. I saw an ocean wave antique quilt, thought it would make a great pattern for a scrappy quilt. Supposedly the pattern originated in New England around 1820s to 1850s. I did find the pattern at the Fat Quarter shop. I changed the size of all the blocks to be smaller. The pattern had half square triangle units, 3x3. I changed them to be 1.5 inch finished. The fabrics are all scrapped from my other project. Background is from Itty Bitty Gatherings. I did a free motion quilting. This is my first time entering a quilt show. Well, thank you, Phyllis, for entering your quilt. It is beautiful. And then we have this unique one here, number 81. And We Gathered in Space and Time by Joanne Mary Lazares from Keller, Texas. It's original pattern, except the patch on the house. All right, where's the patch? Yep, that's a Primitive Gatherings patch. That's funny. Scrap quilts reflect remnants of material from space and time. They remind me of my grandmother and women before her who made quilts with scraps out of necessity. This quilt celebrates quilters who have traveled through space and time to gather together. Now look at how unique this is. It is just wonderful. This is obviously the gathering here, and I love how she put the patch on there. That was so unique. So this is so cool to have that here. And then we have number 28. I love this quilt as well. I love sunflowers. October 20th quilt by Joni Everson, Warren, Ohio. And it is quilted by Charisma Horton. discussion. In January, when Lisa mentioned the 2025 Scrappy Quilt Challenge, I knew what I had to make. Lisa always talks about supporting your local shop, so I did just that. I got in my car with my pattern in my hand and I went to see Corey, owner of Olive and Grace and designer. She's the designer of that as well. I told Corey my idea and together we picked out the material for the top part. I told her I have the bottom covered. The pattern called for 36 different shirtings and I needed at least 72. I thought I needed 119 1.5 inch strips and started cutting from 119 different fabrics. Well, I needed 216 strips, so with the honey bun I had purchased from Primitive Gatherings, I had 2,200 1.5 inch squares sewn together in no time. So look at how beautiful that looks. And together she combined it and it looks great. And then here we have this fun little cow quilt with the barn, with the quilt barn star. Quilting Till the Cows Come Home, Wisconsin Style, from Jill Sold, Washburn, Wisconsin, and is quilted by Jill as well. I found this pattern while on the Nebraska Shop Hop. Love the name. I put special meaning to each cow and named them accordingly. Gopher and Wolverine are for the university I attended. My degrees are quilted into the squares. The barn quilt is my original design that won first place for the Wisconsin State Fair Quilt Topeka Challenge 2024. The log cabin Woody was my first quilt block. So many more memories are included. As for the googly eyes, they just make me happy. Good job. Yes, happy is good. So each one of them has a little name on it. Super fun. Okay. Down here, featured at the end of the hall, this quilt is gorgeous as well. 2022 Mystery Quilt by Jean Campbell from Glen Ellen, Illinois, and it is quilted by Edith Hubbard. I enjoy making quilts that are patterned after antique quilts. Valerie Langue ran this as a mystery quilt with a total of 5 clues. I purchased a bundle of Scrappy Fadays and finished by using a peach and light gray. Yes, there's something very beautiful about that peach and light gray together. Then we have 96. Stars Over Troubled Waters by Adrienne Landgrave, Grand Chute, Wisconsin. And it is Troubled Waters and Star Penny Mat, and it was quilted by Sherry Sweeney. This year I challenged myself to learn a new technique. Having never used triangle papers, I made this penny rug mat. I combined the two into one project. I have been an avid collector of reproduction fabric since living in New England, and this quilt seemed like the perfect one to use some of my treasures. Beautiful. I love how she incorporated them both together. Super cool. All right, we're on the end stretch here. Wrapped in Scraps by Tina Kaler, Menasha, Wisconsin. And it was quilted by Tina as well. This quilt started the day American Patchwork and Quilting magazine arrived. I immediately started going through my scraps and pulling out the fabrics I thought would work. I started piecing blocks, then stopped because I thought I would have to make it bigger. Back to digging through my stash and finding more fabrics. Then this quilt had a long time out. When Lisa talked about a Scrappy Quilt Show, I was inspired to pull out and finish. The quilt that started with 24 center blocks now has 60. So here's your block. So it is half square triangles and with a corner on each one, and then these are just singles. Fun quilt. Ooh, look at this beauty. I can't wait to find out more about this one. Number 72, To Grandmother's House We Go by Bonnie Wilcom, Kiel, Wisconsin. The pattern is from Hidden House, and it is quilted by Bonnie. I purchased this pattern at the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show in 2016. I love that they remember when they purchased it. Like, I can't remember anything. I was challenged by the tiny log cabin squares. The pattern reminded me of visits to my grandmother who lived 10 miles north of the nearest town and 3 miles to the north Wisconsin woods. When we turned off the highway, it was usually after 10 p.m., but we woke from our car naps to see what the headlights would surprise. Deer, raccoons, a bear. I finished the patchwork in Florida in 2024 and quilted on my sister's long arm using a pantograph in 25. The binding and label were finished in September. Super fun. I love all those different sizes. Good job. Number 10. This quilt is a favorite of someone of mine. They loved this quilt. Scrappy Wonky Log Cabin by Cindy Castora of Odessa, Florida. I've been wanting to use a wonky log cabin ruler but never have until I heard about the Scrappy Quilt Show. I thought it would be perfect time to use all my old primitive and Civil War fabric. If you look at the photo, you can see the diagonal line going across the quilt due to the pebble quilting. By the way, the quilting thread is also scrappy. I used most of my variegated spools of thread on this quilt. Thank you for the opportunity. How fun was that? So see the little pebbles that go through the center. Everything else is straight lined, but then she did this pebble quilting through the middle. Fun, very fun. Kismet, Colleen Miller Chase, South Elgin, Illinois. The pattern is called Nesting, and it was quilted by Gina Tell. Thread Graffiti is the name of her quilting company. Everything about this quilt just fell into place. It all started on February 21st with a trip to the antique mall where I spotted a quilt and fell in love. I sent a photo to Lisa if she happened to be interested in it for her collection. Then on March 13th, the theme of the 2025 Quilt Show was announced. An idea was born, and I was off to the antique mall to see if the quilt was still there. That original quilt lives with me now and was my muse all summer long. Isn't it great? So see how all the prints are here, and then close to these are all the solids that really define the blocks. Good job recreating that quilt. Picture Frame by Robin Schlagler of Roseland, New Jersey. Quilted by Robin herself. This quilt started with the fun fabric I found with states and drawings on it. I have never fussy cut a quilt before and had so much fun matching frame fabric around each picture of fabric that I fussy cut. This quilt is also hand-pieced by me. Great job. Those I Spy quilts are super fun, and this is a nice one for collecting all of those novelty fabrics. Number 105. I love this quilt. Just simple, but yet so awesome. Called Gratitude by Deborah Allen, Roanoke, Virginia, and it is quilted by Virginia Longarm. Quilted by Virginia Longarm. I wonder if that's really her name. Anyway, gratitude. We have so many good things to be thankful for. Family, friends, shelter, clean water, electricity, etc. Piecing the Gratitude quilt provided me a way to focus on the goodness of life versus the storms of cancer diagnosis and a severe accident in my family. As I pieced together two squares, I would name something or someone I'm thankful for. The Gratitude quilt has 865 pieces, which gave me 400 reasons to express my gratitude to anchor me to what really matters. Yes, Deborah, good story. All right, here's another one that kind of broke my heart. This one deserves a ribbon as well. I love this quilt. I really, really, really do. Slow and Steady by Donna Parrell, Belmont, Wisconsin. And it is quilted by Melissa Radke. When I saw this, Adidas Star pattern, I thought it was the ultimate scrap quilt. It provided plenty of challenge. I ended up using 4.5 foundation paper piece techniques for the snail's trails block. After completing the binding of my finished quilt, I hung it up and immediately found 4 mistakes. There was no satisfaction in my project until I got out my seam ripper and undid each of the messed up blocks. After some careful handiwork and free motion requilting, I was once again happy with my slow and steady quilt. I might have left it. Once it's quilted, to me, it's meant to be, but beautiful quilt, absolutely love it. Great job on the beautiful scallop border and everything. All right, so that is the end of our 2025 show. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have time to watch this video and to really kind of, you know, reminisce about your quilts that you have made in the past, and maybe you can, if you haven't ever made a scrappy quilt, maybe this show will inspire you to dig through your scraps and get going on a scrap quilt. So I just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and I hope that you enjoyed this quilt show. And remember, 2026 is red, white, and blue. So get going, and I can't wait to see how many quilts we get next year.
Yep.
Hey everyone, it's Lisa from Primitive Gatherings, and today I get to show you the quilt show for 2026. It's a scrappy quilt show, so let's go on in and you can see all the beautiful quilts.
My keys are upstairs.